Guys, we're back with another video, and so in this video we're going to be talking about actually accessing our time and getting the time from the app, and then setting the time of the app to that label that we see here. And to do that, Apple has provided us with an NSDate class, so we're going to make something to give us the current time. So times are, like I said, in the NSDate class of Apple, and we're going to experiment, see what that's actually giving us. So let's make a function called current time. And if you remember before, to return, you can say NSDate, because we're returning an NSDate object. You don't know it yet, but we will. So if you remember, to construct an object, you use the two parentheses, and then if they have constructors, you use them, but we use the constructor without any parameters, so it was just empty. So with this constructor, it actually just gives us the exact current time of the device, so down to the microsecond, I'm pretty sure. So when we call this method, we're just gonna get the current time. But in fact, this actually isn't the best way of doing this, because it doesn't look exactly right. What's the point of having a function called current time, and why do we call it every time? So actually we're going to change this into a variable. And remember, this is a computed property like we discussed before, and I'm going to move it to the top because variables generally go at the top. And instead of calling it a function, we're going to change it to a variable. If you don't remember how this is, it's fine. So to declare a computed property, we have the name of the property, and then the type of the property with the type annotation. Remember, that's this part. And then we have essentially a little baby function that gives us the value of that variable. And because we have an NSDate here, what we return here has to be of type NSDate. So now we have current time. So what can we do with that current time? So we're actually going to make a clock class first. And actually we are going to one second. Yeah, so we're actually going to move this property into a clock class because we want good separation of our code. And let's say another view controller wants to use our clock, and there's no point using the same code again and again. So to make a new file, you say Command N, and we're going to say new Swift file. So this is pretty simple. It's just going to be a new Swift file. We're going to call it clock because remember, we name our Swift files after the class where they contain, although you don't have to. But so remember, to declare class, you do this basically, and you name it with a capital. Every word is a capital. So remember, we had it here. Sorry. So we're going to move this computed property into here. So now we have our nice clock. So right now it doesn't do a whole lot, it just tells us the current time, but that's fine for now, that's all we need. So I'm going to switch to the the standard editor here, and then so I have lots of room to code. So I'm going to say, instead of setting it to current time, because that's not actually what we want to do, so let's say clock.label.text. We're going to set it to, well, actually first we have to make a clock object, remember? So let's say let clock equal clock, because we just made this. So this will work out and everything. So we say clock dot current time, but that won't exactly work, right? Because we can't assign a value of NSDate to a string. Remember, text is a string. We can't do that. So remember, string interpolation we can use to say this, and it'll basically turn it into a string for us. So why don't we run this, see what happens. Remember when I said that NSDate actually holds a lot of information? It shows us a lot about like the current time, and exactly what date it is. So we actually don't want all this information because the user will probably know what year, month, day it is. We just want to show the current time. So to do that, we can format the date, and Apple has provided us with formatter classes. And to do that, let's quickly use one. So we're going to make a formatter variable. Let formatter equal nsDateFormatter. So nsDateFormatter is the class that Apple has provided us with. We instantiate it like this. Oh, sorry. It's called DateFormatter, not nsDateFormatter. nsDateFormatter is if you're back in Swift 2. Now it's just called DateFormatter. So we're gonna say formatter. We're gonna set it up a bit. So formatter.timestyle equal dot short. Yeah. So this is we're telling our formatter to be in a short time, which like a short display method, which we're going to experiment later, but we'll notice that this is what we actually want. So when we have clock label.text equal, now we just don't want to set it to the time, we can actually say formatter dot string from date, or yeah, dot string from date, and we're going to say clock dot current time, because remember, current time is a date. Oh, and 1 second, remember, I'm still used to Swift 2, so we actually don't want to say nsDate here, we want to just say date. Pretty sure this will work out now, because that was the old way of doing it, nsDate. So now, because when Apple released Swift 3, they released a lot of custom classes, because nsDate was back in Objective-C. So we use date now, and so I ran it again with Command R, and our simulator is going to pop up, and here it is, and now we say 1:41 p.m. So that's what time it is, and that's great. So because that's exactly what we want to see. But what if we had said any of these? So time style is an enum. We didn't use an enum last time, but basically an enum is a bunch of values. Oh, sorry. So an enum is a bunch of possible values where it can just be one or the other. So to bring up what it possibly can be, we use a dot, because this is the same way as saying, 1 second. It's the same way of saying date formatter dot time dot style dot, and then we can choose all of these other ones. But because Swift knows that it has to be that enum, because we're assigning it to time style, so we can just say dot short like we did before. But how about, let's say, dot long, and we'll run that Command R. And see, we see a bit longer one. We see the exact second it was, and we see the time zone, we see the PM, we see a lot of stuff. But let's stick with the short. So with that, we actually successfully made our first clock. But in fact, you'll notice that this clock isn't ticking. Like, what if we we close the app and we open it like an hour later, and we find that it still says the same thing because it's not changing. You see here, it's always 1:42:59. So later, in the next couple of videos, we're going to be fixing that up. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next.